Ms. Nachi, I have a question. What's the most difference between the Myanmar and North Korea? These countries are ruled by the military power. So
I'm not quite sure what is the difference between the Myanmar and the North Korea because I don't know what is the system of the North Korean military system. But really similar, I think. They just control everything, so, and then they just enclose to. They don't want to get in the media to get in their countries. So the people who live in their own country, such as Myanmar and North Korea, don't know exactly the other countries, the situation. So everybody means that the leader is. It's easy to control their people, ordinary people. Exactly.
But I believe that in Myanmar, that those things are rapidly changing, right?
Dramatically changing.
Yes, yeah. Still, they have their challenges, especially for some parts of the population. But that's rapidly changing. Yeah. But that kind of change seems to have been brought about rather peacefully. So it's a kind of transformation. So gradual changes, even from a country that you thought, okay, this is hopeless, Myanmar. They went through a transformation, are now going through a transformation process. They didn't went. I think they're still going through a transformation process. They received aid from Japan, for example, and from other countries. A lot of money is flowing in that direction. So that could be an option. And the leadership, I believe that the leadership is still in place, isn't it? Yeah. Yes. So the leadership in itself didn't change. So that could happen. Now, Myanmar is a very good example. I don't know whether Kim Jong-un has it in him. In Myanmar, there was not like a one-person leadership, right? So that, so in North Korea, it's more like Kim Jong-un, who's also revered as a leader. He's like almost revered like a god or a king. In Myanmar, maybe that was not as strong.
The most main party is only the one.
Yes.
And now, some it's not some small ethnic parties there, but they decided the small parties, the ethnic parties, just getting involved in the diet. So nowadays, they just make some law, the official law. So that's why they have they could discuss about the situations and see the future in Myanmar now.
Okay, so you can see that this definitely is possible. It has been shown. Soviet Union has done it. Myanmar is doing it, and there are examples of other countries like. Well, Vietnam is not such a good example, maybe, but. Transformations are possible, even though it looks so unlikely. So who thinks that transformations is the most likely scenario? Or is there anybody who believes that this will definitely be a coup or an assassination? What is your opinion? But how do you think that this will end, or will not end, or will continue?
Before discussion, let me make sure what is the bottleneck for North Korea. My understanding is one crazy leader is keeping the country very close by using the military power, especially nuclear weapon.
Yes.
Which is the bottleneck for this country, let's say, crazy country.
Yes.
So they have to open themselves for all country. That is the key word. That is my opinion. So,
but will they do it? That's the question. Will they do it? Do you think that they will go through these changes and open up?
Oh, by themselves?
Yes.
If current leader is keeping his position as current one, maybe no.
Maybe no.
I don't think so. I believe, could be the one.
Could.
Could be.
coup d'état. So.
Or my hope.
So actually, what is happening at the moment? So there are actually the reason why we have seen last year 9 executions of top military staff is one of the reasons is probably there are a lot of anti-regime movements going on. People who want to take away power from Kim Jong-un and start their own movement. This is the gift economy, as was introduced by Kim Jong-il, led to a lot of vested interest. So money was taken out of the economy and given to the military, which gave them a privileged position. But it also divided the military, because everybody was basically fighting for a piece of the pie, and so there was this pie that Kim Jong-un has, or Kim Jong-il had, and so he divided that, and with that he distracted the military from the issue that he was basically keeping the country hostage, and by dividing them he could create friends and create enemies, and use those friendships and enemies to keep them occupied among themselves. So the divide and rule is an English phrase that is widely used. So keep factions at war with each other, and you will not have to fear so much. This is a few weeks ago we had a session about the Middle East. This was unofficial. The policy of England and later on the United States for the Middle East. Divide and rule. Keep the interest divided, and you can much more easily control them. So this is what Kim Jong-un has done. He still has friends because he can give them gifts. He takes away from the poorest and gives it to the people who can keep him in power. How well he can play them remains to be seen. The fact that he could purge his uncle, that he could have his uncle assassinated, who was the number 2, without him being coming under attack, was quite surprising, actually, because he seemed to have a lot of supporters within the top-ranking officials, but they didn't revolt against Kim Jong-un. So maybe his position is not as weak as we think it is. But it definitely could happen, because it doesn't take that much to kill one person. There's enough weapons lying around there to do it. So it could very well be. The best scenario, I think, would probably be that the country would go through gradual changes to not let it explode. But what do you think the international community should do in order to make that happen? Yes?
Not the country. International.
So, the international community, what should Japan, what should the United States do?
My wife is Chinese of Korean descent, and her grandmother was remaining in that country. That indication, your indication is very, very interesting. We have sympathy on their country, but young people of South Korea is not sympathy on that country. We have to be hurried on unite in Korean Peninsula, and I think United Nations current leader is from Korean Peninsula.
Oh yes.
It could
So yeah, that's interesting.
to be involved.
So you think that these countries can be reunited? So at this moment, for example, their economic systems are completely different. One idea that was introduced by Kim Il-sung quite some time ago, obviously, because he died already in 1994. But one of his ideas was to create a federated state. Like a federation where you have North Korea, South Korea with completely separate economies, but just to create some kind of like legal entity to unite those countries. It never materialized because the country was just way too far apart. This is what I see as the major problem to actually create this kind of reunification. It needs collaboration from Kim Jong-un. And I'm afraid that as soon as he lets go of this, of the throat of his country, they will get him. So whether or not he will be prepared to actually go through this unification process, to transform himself and turn away from his country and say, okay, I will lead you to, because don't forget, everybody there believes that South Korea is the enemy. They're an evil empire. They collaborate together with the United States. So the people there in North Korea, they have been born and raised with the idea that these are the enemies, that they are at war with this evil empire. How they could easily change that perception and start a reunification process, maybe it's difficult. What do you think?
Yeah, I'm sorry. It's different. I think so.
It's difficult. I mean, it would be a very good scenario, but what can we do to bring those countries who are so completely different in economic strength, in leadership, in just legal structure? Everything is different. How could we bring those two countries together? At least when we had East Germany and West Germany, at least there was a public drive to bring the countries together. That drive doesn't exist at the moment. North Koreans do not wish to unite with South Koreans, at least as far as we can tell. But we don't really know what they really feel, what is going on in their real intention. Susui-san.
I think North Korea will be an influential countries in not only in Asia and in the world, because of unique governmental
Yes.
structure.
So.
And many money, and I know many money is entering in North Korea now, and because North Korea is only one country in the world for doing money laundering or and like
Tax.
yes, something and so on. And so I believe North Korea will really growing. It will be growing.
Oh, so basically,
Because
by
underground economy.
so basically, none of the above will happen. So they will just go on like this.
No. I think North Korea is not change in the surface layer or when when we view that countries in outside.
So no assassination, no coup, no collapse, no war,
Yes.
and even no changes.
No change as fast as
So a few changes as possible. But do you think that the money that's flowing into North Korea is actually going to benefit the people of North Korea?
North Korea, the benefit of North Korea is not a matter to discuss, and I think what is the best action to Mr. Kim? That is only important point.
So, but do you think that he has enough power to actually maintain that position? So, if he's the only,
To do so, he wants to he must to get money, large money.
so he needs a lot of money to actually keep handing out gifts.
Yes.
But eventually, the people around him will realize that he's the one who's standing between them and that large money flow. So everybody will try to get to the source and get past him. So eventually, there is an economic theory. If you put more than two people of the same trade together in one room, eventually they will conspire against the public. So that means that eventually they will try to cut out the middleman and get directly to the money.
It is easy to get money by Kim because Welcome is a very high performance trading weapon is a very high benefit.
So they have weapons, but I mean, these weapons are not in the hands of Kim Jong-un. I mean, he controls the country, but eventually those weapons have to be used by military. So that means that he needs enough, at least the majority of the military, to control the other part of the military. That means that he needs to give them a part of his wealth in order to sustain that. But don't you think that eventually those military people who have been played against each other for a long time finally will realize that, okay, all that money, why should we not take that money directly and get him out of the way and take control of all those resources? I think it's very difficult for one man to control that.
I can understand your statement. But
Nothing will change. That's your belief.
But I know fact that North Korea is the only one company in the world to do such things.
But actually, this is already what we're seeing. So a lot of countries keep North Korea alive. They want to keep it alive because they have an interest in keeping it alive. To have a common enemy. Actually, so North Korea is probably the only thing that unites China and Japan and South Korea. So that's one factor, and they don't want to have it collapse. So there's a lot of reasons why you want to keep North Korea alive. But eventually, they can only keep it alive if it doesn't implode. So I think eventually it has to implode. Because there is not enough money to go. A lot of money goes in there, but it's not being distributed equally, and a lot of people will feel that, okay, this cannot go on forever. So it will be impossible. I wouldn't want to be in Kim Jong-un's shoes right now, even though he has lots of money. But there is no way that you can keep on playing that for another 10, 15 years and prevent some group or faction to take over, because everybody has legitimacy. Everybody can feel justified to take him out of the way. Everybody. It's just that they get to each other first before they get to him. Now, in order to play that game, you have to be very, very, very good politician. And he's by himself, man. Eventually, ultimately, it's only him. It's only him. His friends will change with the gifts that he hands out. I don't feel that he has like a real support. Not from the general public, not from the army. So it's gonna be difficult. I think. Gonna be difficult.
I see your statement about.
But your point is basically there is money going. It's not that easy. We saw a documentary on the Saturday session of UNO School about the shadow economy and how money is being diverted away from the regular economy. How North Korea is getting international currency first by doing all kinds of illegal trades, selling off military equipment to, for example, Iran and other countries. They had a whole network of kind of like trading houses in Macau and other parts in the world. They had a bank, a shadow bank in China, where all these money flows went through. But the international community now is starting to crack down. They closed the bank. They are actually seriously monitoring all the ships that go in and out of North Korea to see if there is any like suspicious diversions of the routes that they plan to take. So they are definitely putting more pressure on North Korea. And the current situation is that North Korea is almost impossible for them to engage in this kind of like smuggling or this illegal trade. So the last resort that they have is to sell off their gold reserves. So to sell off their gold and to sell it for direct cash in order to keep money. Foreign reserves come in because they need the foreign reserves to buy these gifts. But it's finite. It's not endless. They cannot do this forever. So eventually the end will come. So something needs to happen. Something needs to happen, and maybe those are changes. I think that's the best thing that could happen to North Korea. But what could Japan do, for example, to make those changes happen? What do you think? Not an easy question. Sorry about that. I don't know the answer. That's why I'm asking you.
Sorry.
Do you want me to pass it on to somebody else? Would you like to answer that question? What do you think that Japan could do to bring about, to force these kind of changes to happen in North Korea?
North Korea has many cheap labor and natural resources to be manufactured. Now, North Korea agriculture is bad.
Yes.
To be a manufacturing country is possible success, possibility.
So actually, this is a very good point. Now, North Korea doesn't have any factories, but there are a lot of North Koreans who are sent overseas. I think we saw, I don't know if we saw it, but I saw a video on North Koreans who are sent to Ulaanbaatar to work in construction. There are women who work in sewing factories overseas. So they are exporting labor to earn foreign currencies. But the next step could be to not having to send those people overseas, but to actually open factories for investors. It would be a little bit a leap of faith, I think, to open up a new factory. It would not be on my short list probably to open up a factory in North Korea, because the future is so uncertain. As a company, I would not easily set up a factory if I wouldn't know that the leadership would still be in place within the next 3 to 5 years. So I don't know if there are investors brave enough to do this, but it could definitely be a good scenario. So one thing that you would suggest is for Japanese to invest in North Korea? Interesting. Okay. Do you have other ideas maybe what Japan could do? Because private investment would probably be difficult. I don't see a company like Mitsubishi or something to say, okay, let's do it. Suzuki, maybe Suzuki. Because there's no domestic market there. The average GDP, the average income per head is $600, so they cannot buy anything. So basically, they should be producing there, and then you have to export it again. With the embargo on North Korean products, may be a little bit difficult to do. So basically, they cut off this possibility to themselves. But if they would offer money, it could be a good step in changing the attitude of the North Korean regime and say, okay, we are going to stop our nuclear development program in exchange for these kinds of investment programs. They already tried to set something up in just north on the border between China and North Korea. There was some kind of town was developed where a lot of Chinese investments went to as a kind of like economic development plan. This was a part of the plan that the uncle of Kim Jong-un led, the guy who was killed. We saw on the picture. So these kinds of ideas exist, but they are difficult to achieve. But Chinese investors stepped in to this. So, and I think actually the Chinese are, as a newly developing country, are much more aggressive in allocating their money and investing their money in project with high yield and maybe high risk than countries like Japan, who are maybe more conservative in their investment strategy. So maybe that could be something for China.
In China, just only that you said, is China just only the one country to invest or to involve in the North Korea? So I think China have some power or influence to be a force to North Korea to
Yes.
be a developed. For example, let's say if the China invests and then just they invest this same manpower to build something or to construct something like that, and that's the Chinese people get money from that kind of situation, and then no matter that North Korea people can get the income from this situation, and then the North Korea's people think about it's not fair, right? So at that time they feel, I think that they feel something like they don't want the Chinese people to get in there and make some construction, because they just get it.
And take all the money out.
The money, the benefit, they only the benefit get money, so just not. At that time, they thought that North Korea's people think about this is a demerit to Chinese people coming the demerit like that. So at that time they think about they need something, that they need to make some decision or make another step to develop something like that.
So that kind of sentiment could ultimately lead to revolt. Is what you're saying? So, but that actually makes the situation like a little bit complicated, don't you think? Because actually that's exactly a scenario that could happen. So if China were to invest as a first step to change, it could also lead China, who then has a vested interest in North Korea, not to let the government change. Because if the government changes, that is a serious risk for their investment. So investment could also lead to further stabilizing the regime. Right? Because as long as the regime doesn't fall, as long as they are in firm control of the country, their investment is secured. So these are the other day I heard something about a company who set up a factory in Egypt, and then in Egypt they decided to raise the minimum wage, and the company sued the Egyptian government because they came to Egypt under the assumption that they would have this cost advantage, but eventually that turned out to be wrong. So if we allow, for example, if China would go in and really start to invest, then we also need to take into consideration it doesn't automatically mean that from then on it will start rolling. Basically, maybe it will actually solidify because now the regime has somebody at their side, China, to actually safeguard their investment. So I definitely think that you have a good point to say that, or maybe actually this investment will not automatically lead to change. Maybe it will lead to change because people will leap over it because they see that it's not helping them at all. But then they will have to deal with both Kim Jong-un and the Chinese. So who thinks he's going to be killed? Nobody. I think he could be killed actually. Yeah. I wouldn't be too much surprised if he would eventually be killed.
But I don't see any news on like CNN and BBC
No.
that a few months ago sometimes TV is spent for him. Mr. Kim no seen for 4 months or 2 months, but now I don't see any news of him.
So he's not in the news anymore. That's true. No more executions. Nothing is really happening. The latest news is that this year's crop is going to be probably bad. So a famine is right around the corner. So there could be more hunger, and everything that happens, basically everything that changes this balance, will create new movements, and the forces around him are so big. The groups that he has to challenge, the challenges are so big that everything that happens is a risk for him. And I'm not sure whether he will be capable of controlling those forces. And those forces eventually could kill him. I think it actually maybe murder, assassination is not such an unlikely scenario. Because if there is going to be a coup d'etat, definitely I think also he will be killed.
So if anything happened on the surface officially, I think there's something happened behind the scene as it's totally different, a different story. But
So
if something happened on the scene, maybe things is maybe coming from the humanitarian ground. The people is suffering the worst.
yes.
But
they have no power. That's the problem for the people. They have no power. They have in German they say erst das Fressen und dann die Moral. It means that first there has to be food, then we will think about morals, like values and whatever. A lot of people now are just struggling to get enough food in their stomachs. So they are not they're not open to think about changes and things like that, unless they are really going to die and they have some kind of chance to do that. But they don't have the support of the military. The military have a very privileged situation, a privileged position. So even though the people would want to revolt, if it would be Kim Jong-un or the people, the military would choose for Kim Jong-un because they provide him with a very privileged situation. Because if you look at it, even though the army is divided, it's not sure which faction is going to become the leader. So if the army would, if Kim Jong-un would fall away, it would become a huge power struggle, and only a few people would be daring to go into the situation. So now they know that they have like at least they have something in their hand. It could very well be that if they play the card and want to play all or nothing, that they end up with nothing. So it's very difficult for the regular people to get support from the army, because the army is also divided. The military.
Look back to history, and the last dynasty is Lee dynasty in Korea. But during the history, the Lee dynasty is a dependence country, independent, because they are very influenced from China. So if the coup happened, the military must to be supported by China. So if the China supports a part of the military group, it will can rule the Korea. I think so.
But actually, so this is what we have been talking about on Saturday, about this strange, I don't think it's so strange, but the strange movement that South Korea made towards intensifying their relations with China away from the United States. I think that's part of the reason is exactly what you are saying, Aoki-san, is that actually South Korea realizes that if China were to back the North Korea military, then it could actually lead to a coup d'etat, and that could create this kind of uncertain future also for China. So I don't know whether China would be willing to play that card and take that risk, but if they would, it's better for South Korea to have good relationships with them to actually make sure that this kind of scenario would not take place.
Actually, it seems that China is now being fed up with the existing, the current
Absolutely, yeah. So they are. I think actually what really ticked them off, what really made them angry, was the assassination of Uncle Kim, who had basically effectively had the relationship with China. So that really made them turn against the regime. So it's not so easy the whole to make a forecast about North Korea. Tsu-Chan said nothing will happen because they just get too much money, and maybe they will reunite. That would be the best scenario. Or gradual changes will take place if we're going to invest in it. That would be the best scenario. Would this country to gradually change out of this regime and into a new full member of the international community. It's very difficult to see that which direction it will go, but we know one thing, that situation like this will never last indefinite. It may change within the next 5 years, as I think. It may change within the next 100 years, as Tsu-Chan thinks maybe. But eventually it will change, and how it will take place, it's a very interesting discussion. I hope that we can actually make influence the process, that they will not go through worst case scenarios where we have some kind of civil war, where different groups take control of nuclear weapons and will lead to mass human loss within North Korea. That we will be capable as an international community to guide, to push that country through change, and not let it linger like we have been, because the situation for the North Koreans is really deplorable, and yet another famine that's waiting for them. They are extremely poor, and it's really the country is basically one big humanitarian crisis. So I hope that rather sooner than later things will change in a controlled manner, and I would like with those words to close today's session. Thank you very much for coming.
Thank you.